Hi, I'm Chef Jessica Marinaccio, and I'm the Culinary Brands Application Specialist here at Tomric. Today we're going to be reviewing how to make a nice finished polish and glaze on your pan items. What we have is some pan cereal. The reason why we use cereal often is because it is not only inexpensive, but it's also lightweight. So if you can learn to pan with cereal, you can learn to pan with pretty much anything. What we have today is a dark chocolate on top of the cereal, as well as a white chocolate pistachio outer coating, and we finish it off with a little bit of luster dust, gold and green. Before you start the polishing and glazing process, it's important that you get a batch weight of your finished pan product. Today we have a batch weight of 12 kg. It is important that you contact your manufacturer supplier of your glazes and your polishes to ask them for their manufacturer instructions. Each manufacturer may have different instructions as to the amount that you should be using per batch. The chocolate around your center needs to fully crystallize before you can do the polish and glazing. Best recommendation is to let it sit overnight to ensure that this crystallization is completed prior to the application. To adjust the air in your confit, simply hold down the snowflake button for 3 seconds until you see the cold air temperature start to blink. At this point, you can hit the plus or minus keys to adjust your temperature to where it needs to be. Prior to your first addition of polish, have your centers tumbling in the panner with the cold air, chilling them for just a few minutes. Before we begin polishing, you need to know your final batch weight. For this, we had 12 kgs of final product. Then you can measure out your polish 3 to 4 grams for every kg. So in this instance, I like to go on the higher end always, so we will be using 48 grams of the polish for our first application. Shut off the air on your confit every time you add in polish or glaze. Add the polish directly into the batch. You can use a rubber spatula to scrape out every remaining bit of the polish. Once the polish is fully incorporated, turn on the air and let the product run from 8 to 12 minutes until it's fully dry to the touch. As your product gets more polished, you may need to increase the rotation speed of the panner. For the second application of the polish, you may want to add 2 to 3 grams of polish per kg. Since we are working with 12 kgs of product, we will be adding 3 grams, that's a total of 36 grams for this application. Always shut off the air prior to the application of the polish. Once the polish is fully incorporated, turn the air back on and let it run until it is thoroughly dry. Increase speed on the panning machine if needed. After some time tumbling, the product will start to develop a nice shine. If you deem it necessary, you can proceed with a third application of the polish with the parameters of 1 to 2 grams per kilogram. Follow the same process to ensure it is thoroughly dry before moving on to the glazing application. Although today we are using a non-vegan glaze, it's important to note that vegan glaze options are available. I recommend slightly warming them before adding them into your batch. As you can see, the traditional glaze is much thinner and less viscous than the vegan. For application for the glaze, we need 2.5 to 4 grams per kilograms of batch weight. So for us, we will be adding 48 grams to our batch today. It's important to note that the air should not be running when you add in the glaze. Like the polish, we want it to fully incorporate before we turn on the air. Let the pan rotate until the pan product is completely dry to the touch, approximately 5 minutes. While adding in the glaze, please make sure that your face is away from the bowl since it tends to have a very pungent alcohol odor to it. It's very common that after you add in the glaze, your product will slosh around in the bowl from side to side and not have a tumble that we're used to. To fix this, just simply adjust the rotation at 5% increments at a time until you get back to a rolling bed of product. If you don't have enough product in the machine, it might not go back to a rolling bed and continue to slosh around inside the drum.
Dry.
The purpose of the glaze is to seal the product to ensure a longer shelf life. Once the glaze is fully dry to the touch and set, then you could start transferring your product out of the panner onto vented trays. While our candy was acceptable prior to polishing, you can see how this process can elevate the presentation of your final product while also improving its shelf life. Now, when most manufacturers recommend their guidelines for temperatures, I strongly recommend sticking to Selmi's practice guidelines for temperature control while panning and also polishing. For example, the manufacturer that we use today for the polish and glazes recommend that we use a temperature range of 65 degrees Fahrenheit for dark, 60 degrees Fahrenheit for milk, and 55 degrees Fahrenheit for white chocolate. I found today while polishing with the white chocolate that Selmi's guidelines work best. For white chocolate, they recommend 43 to 46 degrees Fahrenheit. For milk, they recommend 46 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and for dark chocolate, they recommend 50 to 53 degrees Fahrenheit. If you follow this in the polishing practices that we showed you today, you're going to end up with a beautiful, glossy product. Another good thing to note is if you notice, we have our product laying on vented trays. The reason why this is important is because the product will stick together if left consolidated for too long. So we have just 2 layers here. The vented trays give the product the ability to evaporate the alcohol with air moving around them without them being stuck together like we would see on a normal sheet tray. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you ever have any questions or need any further culinary support or just support in general, feel free to contact us at tomrick.com. Take care and have a great day. Cheers.